So please allow me to share my PowerPoint. Okay, so I'll be talking about the strategic guide in conducting research, which is the very basic, which is the foundation of conducting research in all kinds, in different fields, in all aspects of our lives, profession, family life, community life, business life, etc. So again, I'll be talking about the strategic guide in conducting research. So which is the very foundation of every research in the world. Okay, so let's tingle this. So please allow me not to open my camera, to close my camera, because I'm not that feeling well today because of my runny nose. So please allow me not to open my video. Okay, so let's tingle this. A vision to be effective should be coupled with risk, resilience, initiative, strategy, knowledge, and spirits. So the risk that I have been developed since I was working with the research, but I have developed this risk since 2021 last year. So a vision, again, a vision to be effective should be coupled with risk in anything, in everything we do. We are supposed to have some sort of level of resilience. The initiative is there. Do not stop at one end in one point. You have to develop your own strategy to be able to come up with everything that you want to achieve or to really to attain. In the knowledge that we will be using to be able to come up with what really our heart really desire to achieve. And also, of course, the spirit, meaning you are supposed to be there. You are supposed to be present. You are supposed to be in your focus. So that is why these risks are very important to every individual. Again, I would like to share with you today my own quotation. A vision to be effective should be coupled with risk, resilience, initiative, strategy, knowledge, and again, spirit. It was written in 2021. Okay, so what are the objectives of today's presentation for the other people to know exactly what we want to attain? Understand the very reason of conducting a research. That is one among the very foundation of conducting research. Be familiar with the process of what should be observed in a research plan. Critically evaluate the steps in executing the research. So these are the objectives of today's presentation. Again, understand the very reason of conducting a research. Be familiar with the process of what should be observed to a research plan. Critically evaluate the steps in executing the research. Okay, let's start with the definition of research. This is my own definition, layman's definition. A study or investigation which is done systematically, empirically, scientifically, and logically for the purpose of achieving knowledge and helping situational problem. That is one among the reasons why we have to conduct research. We have to identify a problem, or most probably, we have already the problems at hand, of which we have to look for a solution. And the process of looking for a solution is a way to conduct a research. That is why it is very important for us to know the definition of research before anything else. And based on the deduced definition of research, it is the management of data following the planning, organizing, leading, and controlling processes to be able to draw conclusions and eventually decisions that organizations, community, and group of individuals, either for formal or non-formal, civic or non-civic, private or governmental, would be benefited in many ways. To be more specific, the community in general. It could either be your institution, it could either be yourselves, it could either be your family, your community, your society, whatever you are, whatever you intend to achieve, whatever you want to express, etc. So again, planning, organizing, leading, and controlling processes. Again, when we are talking of planning, we have to identify what should be done and what should be achieved. Organizing is allotment. It is a way to allot some of the resources, or most probably all the resources that a certain group of researchers are having. And definitely, you are to lead people. It is not something for your own self, but for the other people who are expecting something in return to what you have done, to what you are supposed to be done. And also, of course, controlling. It is a way to fill in the gaps. Usually in the process of conducting research, we are identifying the gaps. And that is the only thing we have to look and to refine what should be done to be more specific between what has been planned and what you have been achieving. Okay, again, the deduced definition of research. This is my own definition. The management of data, following the planning, organizing, leading, and controlling processes to be able to do conclusions and eventual decisions that organization, community, and group of individuals, either formal or non-formal, civic or non-civic, private or governmental, would be benefited in many ways. It was written in 2004. Again, so the planning the research, which is also part of the definition of research. Planning the research, the key steps observed are the following. Identify the problem area. What particular aspects of our organization, what particular facets of our lives that need to be identified. So identify the problem area. Survey the literature relating to the problem, because it is one way for us to be safe when it comes to plagiarism. And also, of course, one way to be able to identify if your research is considered original or not. If not, to a certain extent that you have add on to a particular body of knowledge. It has something to do with coming up with a new idea. If it is not that original, but a new idea to improve what is existing. Define the actual problem for investigation in clear, specific terms. To be more specific when it comes to the focus in attention of the researchers, and also, of course, to be able to exactly solve what has been identified in the problem. So what do you mean by that? You have to identify the different variables. The next one is formulate hypotheses and define the basic concepts and variables in relation to what you have been defined. And actually define, meaning we have adjusted already what you really intend to measure, what you really intend to achieve. Now, the next one is to state the underlying assumptions which govern the interpretations of results. Underlying assumption. Let's say, for example, that your focus is only for engineers, to be more specific, chemical engineers, a group of people who are involved in the process of creating some sort of chemical formulation, chemical balancing, etc. And for the improvements of the lives of the people in relation to the work of the scientists, etc. So construct the research design to maximize internal and external validity. That is also one way to be able to identify if your data will be considered original or not. Construct a research design which is qualitative or quantitative, and you have to specify what should be the method to be used or the design to be applied in the conduct of your research. It could either be some sort of quantitative, the different quantitative designs, quantitative methods, and different qualitative methods, or especially nowadays that we are using, it is one way to cross-validate the results, which is the mixed method or the triangulation. So for the construct, the research design, selection of the subjects, control and or manipulations of relevant variables. And that exactly one way to maximize internal and external validity. Internal when it comes to the information that you will be including in the conduct of your research, but when it comes to the external validity, there's something to do with the method of identifying the plagiarism that exists within what you have made in the internal concept. So the next one is instrumentation selection. What does it mean by instrumentation selection? The things that you will be utilizing to be able to draw, to be able to collect, to be able to ask, to be able to manipulate the data. Instrumentation in a sort of questionnaire, in the form of questionnaire, or it could either be a checklist, or it could either be a question, an open-ended or the closed-ended questionnaire. Those are the instruments that you will be utilizing to be able to draw information or the data that you will be needing in the conduct of your research. Specify the data collection procedures. What should be the first step, the second step, the third, and so on. In that way, you could easily modify the actions to be taken. Select the data analysis methodology, which is with the aid and the use of the qualitative and quantitative. It depends on what you have identified in your problem. Execute the research, and that is the last. Executions of research, meaning you are supposed to start or follow what you have been designed, following your procedures, following your steps, following your policies, and also, of course, evaluate the findings and draw conclusions. So these are the last part of the key steps. So consideration in designing a research. Define a problem area. Choose your methodology wisely. Consider combining methodology. Could either be the one that I have made mention, the mixed method or the triangulation. Define instrumentation specifically. Consider appropriateness of statistical tools to draw conclusions. So consideration meaning these are the minimum things that we have to observe to be able to plan ahead, to be able to easily execute what is in the plan. So for the executions of the research, executing the research, sources of problems, it is very important to be able to identify, to be able to draw, to be able to design, to be able to define, to be able to enhance, etc. What are the sources of problems? Where to get the information, where to get the problems, how to identify the problems, etc. First and foremost, the field of specialization. We cannot even identify our problems if we are not that intense when it comes to the work that we are performing. Let's say, for example, you are an engineer, but you are performing a certain task such as an actor or a singer or a dancer. It is very basically different field, but that exactly where your heart goes. You can find yourself in dancing, in singing, in acting, but your profession is an engineering field. So field of specialization, meaning if you are that interested to engineering work, your focus should always be in the engineering work. Let's say chemical engineering, electrical engineering, you are after the connections of the power, the energy, etc. So field of specialization is one way, the one that we commonly focus of attention. So most of the countries of today, especially the third world countries, within the climate change and the global warming are the two major issues in concern. Within the first world countries or highly industrialized countries, never think of how they will be improving themselves, their countries, because they have all the technologies. The countries are having problems with this kind of issues because we are not that contented with what we can provide or what we can solve. Are we ready with the global warming? What are the things that we need to do? So field of specialization, academic and or professional encounter, like the one that we are commonly do. We are conducting and we are initiating this kind of conferences, etc. Those are the areas, the rich, the very good, the rich of information when it comes to identifying the problems, the source of problems, interaction, communication. This is also one way to be able to understand across the globe, the people, the community in different perspective. So academic and professional encounter is a rich source of problem. Program of collateral readings, meaning what does it mean by collateral readings? Those are the informations that you have read based on the information from the journal, from the books, from the magazine, from the newspapers. Collateral readings, meaning what you have understood based on what you have read. If you cannot find it easily to be understood, that is one also source of problem. Existing practice. Have you evaluated the existing practices of your organizations, of the people, of the community, the culture, the practices, the tradition, the norms? Are these things really help the people to grow? Sometimes, if you will be evaluating the practices of other organizations, it hinders the people to be more productive, to be more enhanced, and to be more knowledge intent practices. Another one is published and unpublished research reports. Once that you have done reading in relation to program of collateral readings, published and unpublished research reports are also rich source of problems. Sometimes when you encounter the problems and you have read an information, it doubles the attention and eagerness of a person to solve such problem, because sometimes you cannot even understand or understood what is written in the report. It's just a matter of preparing the information and share with other people without even checking the information, or without even validating the information if it is applicable for publication. So the criteria and the selections of the problem. First, problem characteristics. How can we identify the problem? How could we qualify the problem? What most probably the characteristics? Is it widespread? Will it enhance the personality? Will it improve the organization? Will it add to the body of knowledge of a certain discipline and also, of course, profession? The next one is researchers' characteristics. Am I that intense when it comes to conducting a research? What is my level of understanding in the process of conducting research? The one that I have made mention in the previous lecture that I have shared with you. The 3H are most probably important to consider. the head, the brain, the intelligence, the heart, the affection, and the skills or the hands. The 3H model that I have made mention and developed are a rich source of problems. So the researcher's characteristics, meaning do you have the energy, do you have the knowledge, do you have the donuts, do you have the skills, and do you have the ability? The capability and abilities as well are part of the researcher's characteristics. Sometimes, or more often than not, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of researchers that when they have encountered problems, aside of course from the problems identified, the tendency is to stop at one point in time, then rethink, is it possible for me to continue? Because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of hindrances along the way. Yes, you will encounter a lot of problems along the way, but make it sure that your characteristics are intense. When it comes to intense, it has something to do with your dedication, with your mission, with your vision of helping a particular community. The process, feasibility. Is it feasible? Is it viable to conduct a research? The one that I have made mention in some of my lecture, that one among the data will be coming from abroad. To be more specific, in the field of music, my student really want to produce a violin string from cow's milk. And in the Philippines, it is not that, I might say, that it is not that quality when it comes to the milk, because our situation in the Philippines is not that good for the cattle. It is because Philippines is a tropical country. So where to get the information, where to get the data? Somewhere in New Zealand. So she traveled abroad to be able to get the information. So is it feasible? For her, most probably yes. And for those people like me, I am not that rich to go abroad just to collect information and data. I do not have the budget. The budget allocation is intended only in the Philippines. So it is not feasible for me. But to that girl who is mastering the music, is feasible. So take note to consider the feasibility. The what, the who, the where, and the when. And also, of course, other resources such as money and time. So the next one is the problem characteristics. Novelty and originality. When we are talking of novelty, will it only answer the innovation, or when it comes to originality, the zero plagiarism, or you have not even encountered any topic or focus of research in relation to the topic that you have identified. Novelty means it is also one way to be able to solve a side problem. It is not only the main problem, but other problems that might be solved. Theoretical value. Will it add values to the present existing body of knowledge? Or will it aid to those people to increase their awareness, the level of intelligence, and the information? Also, of course, the knowledge. And the practical value, the usability and applicability of the results of your research. And also, of course, workability, the access to data manageable. That's the one among the problem. In relation to what I have made mention, that's one of my students in conducting a research, which is scientific research, producing violin string out of the cattle's milk. Workability in a sense that access to data is considered manageable, and the criticalness, the magnitude, and the scope of your research. Is it, if it is intense, do I need to increase the participations of the respondents? Do I need to repeat? Do I need to conduct? Do I need to verify? Do I need to cross-validate the information from one place to the other? Let's say, for example, be conducting a women's at 40 in the Philippines, in India, in the United States, in other parts of the world, wherein the study should be compiled, should measure across the world the problems that encountered by the women at 40, or if it is common among, or if they are different from one aspect of their lives from other women in the world. So researchers' characteristics, special qualification, the interest, the focus, and also, of course, process feasibility, the time requirement, we have the costs, and also, of course, risk and hazard. If it is possible to consider that your research is feasible or not. And also, of course, the availability of facilities. And for the general major problems stated briefly and clearly as part of the characteristics of a good problem statement. General or the major problems stated briefly and clearly, and the sub-problems likewise briefly and clearly stated, order and sequence, showing relative importance in support of the major problem. And also, of course, in most cases, not answerable by yes or no. It is just a way to be able to survey if it is possible. Let's say, for example, if I will be establishing a business, will you be patronizing our business? Yes or no? It is just a matter of a pool, meaning you are identifying what percentages are. But when it comes to the characteristic problems, it should be intense. It is not only answerable by yes or no. Questions fine-tuned to enhance directions of the study. So from the first sub-problem to the second, third, fourth, etc., they are supposed to be related to one another, to be able to capture what is intended by the researcher based on the identified and enhanced problem. The theoretical concept, or the theoretical or framework, theoretical framework or conceptual framework. When it comes to theory, you have to explain it fully, how the theory will be applicable to your research. And when it comes to concept design, it depends on how you will be collecting the data. And the model adoption is also one among the consideration. The one that I had made in 2007, the Holland's typology of personality among the teachers, tertiary teachers in the Philippines. So model adoption, I adapted the model, but I have eliminating some ideas of which definitely fits in to the characteristics of the Filipino people. So paradigm representation is a way to be able to identify, interconnect the different variables that you have identified. Also, of course, integrations of related literature. It is very important to integrate every aspect of what you have read in relation to the variables that you have identified. Make sure that what you have read gives importance to your research information. So importance of the review. Why do we have to review? It is one way to delineate the information from the rest, validate or invalidate the information from the other researchers' outputs, and also, of course, one way to eliminate some sort of plagiarism. The requirements of good literature review must be identified. source of literature search is also be important. So selecting the research method. The three methods most relevant to current research needs are descriptive method, ethnographic method, and the last one is experimental method. These are the common, most relevant in our time. And mostly some researchers like me are using mixed method. And sometimes the scripted method could be possibly mixed with ethnographic method and experimental method. But we have to consider the time element. Is it possible to conduct the three different methods in just one setting? Let's say 3 months, 6 months, or even 1 year. But it depends on the degree of the problems that you have identified. Will it be possible, whatever the result is applicable to all people around the globe, like the scientist does? And we have also to consider the sampling technique. Sampling techniques such as the non-probability sampling, the less representative, like the convenience, the quota, etc. And also, of course, probability sampling, like random selections of study units by chance, which is simple random sampling, systematic sampling with random start, and also, of course, the stratified sampling. And the cluster samplings are also being used. It is also one way, but it is a more on the higher rank. And also, of course, a wide in scope. You could possibly use the multi-stage sampling, the combinations of the different methods, like simple random and the cluster sampling, or systematic sampling and the cluster sampling, stratified sampling and the cluster sampling. It depends on the need of your research. So let's talk about the instrumentation selection. The first one is the questionnaire, the interview, the documentary analysis, and the observation. And sometimes if you are applying or utilizing the mixed method or the triangulation, it has something to do with the mixture of everything as part of your instrumentation. The questionnaire, yeah, it could either be your open-ended or the closed-ended questionnaire. The interview, the guide questions are very important, and you should know how to construct the question in a series of relevant questions. It is not just by asking something. It should be based on what you have identified as part of your problem. And the documentary analysis, which is also relevant to be able to prove, disprove, validate, or invalidate some informations that you have utilized. And also, of course, it is not that intense when it comes to invalidating your present results. It is one way to be able to identify if other research outputs in line with what you have identified or what you have focused on are also applicable. And also, of course, the observation, like what the scientists, when it comes to experimental research, and also, of course, when it comes to strategic choice of actions, you are supposed to use the observation, especially when it comes to the applications of the policies, the applications and the side of procedures, guidelines, etc. And also, of course, participant observation. This is a two-way to be able to validate the information from what you have observed and what you have experienced. It is two-way also, of course, of validating and invalidating what you have experimented, what you have observed, and what is in the documents already. If it is a question of validity of the informations written or in the written document, etc. Okay, so let's talk about the quantitative and qualitative data analysis. Inferential data analysis. computer data analysis, and the narrative description. So inferential data analysis with the application of the statistical tools, methods, and techniques. And when it comes to computer data analysis, it has something to do with the applications of what we call programs like the SPSS. In the Philippines, we have the SPS. It was basically designed by a certain professor from the University of the Philippines, a statistician who have been in the field of research and who have been in the field of statistics and mathematics for almost 6 decades. And also, of course, the narrative description, which is a very one of the most difficult method to be applied in conducting research, because it is dependent on how you will be interpreting the information, the written information, the recorded information, or based on the interview that you have conducted. Narrative means you have to explain everything, what you have observed, what you have experienced, what you have seen, what you have read, what you have in mind. Sometimes it is sometimes it is a question of the validity of information. It is because of your inference, because you are the one who interpreted the information alone. So that is why in some cases you have to get some readings and related information to be able to claim that what you have observed, that what you have experienced are true. Okay, and writing the research manuscript. Abstract, we have the brief statement about the main purpose of the study, period of the study, population, respondents, the method of research used, the research instrument, and the sampling design must also be elucidated. The abstract means the complete or the main or the gist of what you have researched on. So for the introduction, the presentation of the problem, which is the evolution of the problem, where you have encountered the problem and you have to narrate everything. Existence of unsatisfactory conditions, let's say for example, the issues and concern regarding the policies on fighting a COVID-19, etc. The rationale or the reason of this study must also be included. Why we have to conduct such research? What should be the thesis to be attained? What should be the thesis to be achieved? And also, of course, we have to include the study locale, meaning where the conduct of the research be happen. Is it in the Philippines? Which part of the Philippines? Is it Luzon, Visayas, in Mindanao? Those are the 3 biggest geographical area in the Philippines. The Philippines basically subdivided into 3 major geographic areas: the Luzon, the Visayas, and the Mindanao. And also, of course, we have to consider the time frame, because sometimes when we are taking any longer, some informations are irrelevant. That is why there is what we call there is a high percentage when it comes to turnover of the commercials on our local television and even in the international television networks. The life of the artists, the programs, televisions, radios, or even internet will be dependent on the commercials. So those commercials are very often to change because the mindset of the people is that whenever they have seen already the commercial, they are fine-tuned already of what is expected from that commercial. So therefore, there is what we call the sudden change. It is just last for a maximum of 3 months, or else your commercial will not be applicable at the present scenario. So possible solution to the existing problems must also be elucidated. Beneficiaries and how they are to be benefited. Beneficiaries, those are the people from the community of which the problems has been developed. The possible contribution to fund of knowledge, and also of course possible implication must be included as part of the introduction. Review of related literature, the concepts and the theories, the paradigm, simulacrum, schematic diagram must be identified fully. It is one way to be able to show on how you will be generating the information, the data that you will be interpreting, and the statement of the problem or the objectives of this study. Take note, in some other research output, they are more on the statement of objectives and also, of course, the statement of the problem. Are these two words, problem and objectives, are of different focus? No. What is your objective? That will be your problem to be solved. And what is the problem? That is your objective to be answered. So meaning, it depends on how you will be utilizing the information. It could either be statement of the problem or statement of objectives. Both are issues and concerns that needs to be addressed, to be more specific, to be more intense, and to be more light in discussion. So research methodology, the research design, the subjects, the instruments, and even the statistics is, if applicable. If you will be utilizing quantitative techniques or quantitative methods, you are supposed to use statistics. But if you do not want to utilize statistics, because sometimes actually mathematics is one of the hatest concern or the subject matter across the globe by the many. It is because they do not want to solve problems in a mathematical way. But actually, it is very simple. It's just a matter of loving math. Data gathering procedures, the steps, the guidelines, the policy, and how to generate the information, and the data analysis. So it depends on the collections of your information, the collected information or the data. It could either be numerical data or descriptive data. Results and discussions. The three ways of presenting data, the tabular, the textual, or the graphical. It depends on what your intentions or what you really love to present. And most of the time, the tabular is the most applicable. Why? Because you can see already what is expected from the research. Analysis, interpretation, or implication must also be given priority. Analysis in the sense that you are just presenting the data in what manner you would like to present it, like tabular, textual, and graphical, etc. So the interpretation is based on what is the data tells us about. And also, of course, the implication, which include the differences or the commonalities. And also, of course, the findings. The findings are the gist. And the conclusions and recommendation. The conclusions and the findings are based on the analysis, interpretations, or implications. And the conclusion will be dependent on the findings. And the recommendation will be based on the conclusion. And the recommendation should address what has been in the problem. Okay? So meaning, those are the things that we need to consider. For the results and discussion, the elements of analysis, interpretations, or implication. Statement of condition or situation. The probable cause of condition. And the probable effects. Veil suggestions for continuance or remedial measures if possible effects are bad. If not, there should be enhancement. And also, of course, Findings lumped up together following each specific question number 1, 2, 3, and so on. All the important data and highlights of the answers to questions must be included. And for the conclusion, this is the generalizations based on findings, not to contain numerals, answering the appropriately specific questions, based on the findings. And for the last one, sorry. Recommendation should solve or help solve problems discovered in the investigation. Be for the continuance of good practice or system. So aim for the ideal, but must be feasible, practical, and attainable. Meaning, once that you have creating some sort of recommendation, it is for the easiness of everybody. It is the meaning you are supposed to recommend something which benefits a certain group of people. Be addressed to persons, entities, agencies that are in a position or implement them. Let's say the mayor of a certain community or a certain town, the legislative bodies, etc. Include the recommendation for further research related to the topic. And this is for the community of educators and the community of researchers. For this, or most probably you yourself could possibly continue what you have just started. Okay, so criteria for good research output. A very good problem. Set in its scientific content, clearly defined methodology, appropriate and adequate data, and also, of course, appropriate and adequate data analysis. It is not just the data, but also, of course, on how you will be interpreting the information or the data. Clear separations of results in their interpretation to be more precise and to be more clear. Correct conclusions and doable recommendation. Look at the doable recommendation. For those people who will definitely be benefited from the research output that you are having. And also, of course, the well-structured and clearly written. And that will be all. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that you have learned something from today. And I'll be expecting that you will be sharing the information to others who are also in need of this kind of information, for especially those who are who have just started their research endeavor. Namaste, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon.